Here at Going Now, we're big fans of Multiverse, if you can't already tell. And when we were asked if we wanted to help get the word out about Multiverse and the many facets of it and the many people involved, of course we jumped at the chance to do so. And in doing so, we've created this great show for you here that you're going to see. And so, what is Multiverse? Well, here is the great Jesse Adams to tell you all about it.
We are a convention for fans from all backgrounds, any fans of science fiction, fantasy, horror, gaming, art, and generally just anything geeky at all. That's been one of the fun parts, is expanding outside of like traditional fandom, and because we realized that like people have different kind of stuff they nerd out about, right? It could be history or science or fountain pens, whatever it is. The common thread is that there's a strong interest in something that you want to share with people. So that's the point of conventions in my book, but also Multiverse in particular, is let everybody get together in an environment where everybody feels welcomed and included, like genuinely included. And it happens every October, third weekend of every October. This year, it's October 20th through 22nd. In Atlanta, which I figure most people know, at the Westin Atlanta Perimeter North. All the stuff's at multiversecon.org.
For this episode, we welcome in Sean S.M. Hillman. He is the play track director at Multiverse, along with being the science fiction track director at JordanCon. He is an author and an avid gamer, especially when it comes to tabletop games, where he also contributes to the N-World RPG news and reviews community. Then we play a little chess with Darren Kennedy. Doctor by day, author by night. Darren Kennedy is a prolific author who has done quite a bit of vending and does a lot of panels at Multiverse. He's been there every year since it started. Then we get out our dice and roll into the fun. That is the play track at Multiverse, where you can get in as much gaming as you can imagine. So get ready for another great spotlight on the Multiverse Convention with your host, Joe Compton. Yay! Hello everybody and welcome to the Spotlight on Multiverse. I am your host, Joe Compton, and I have the wonderful S.M. Hillman with me. We have a good crowd here tonight. Jessica said she just wanted to pop in and say have fun. Vanessa says I'm sitting here doing other things while I wait, and the music is ends up starting. I'm going to have a heart attack. Hopefully you didn't have a heart attack. I didn't see you post after that, so hopefully that didn't happen. Hi to Anita. Anita's out there. Holly and Mistletoe is here tonight. Yay, fountain pens. Yeah. That's always a good conversation at Multiverse, I think. And the chairs are here. I'm guessing that either that's Allie or Jesse. I'm guessing it's Jesse. Yo, fellas. Hello. How y'all doing? But yeah. So, Sean, if you wanted to expand upon... Oh, Liam's here as well. Hello, Liam. If you want to expand upon the intro that I provided for you, if there's
Sure.
something I missed, please feel free.
Not too much you missed. I was an avid gamer growing up, so Dad got for the family the Dungeons and Dragons very red, actually purple basic set. People can get very specific about that, but. And so,
yes, I know, I've heard that.
From someone who was already very much into, so I like the basic board games, but like stuff like Risk as well, Stratego, and then along comes Dungeons and Dragons, and that was a big deal in my life in terms of not just being a player of games. Maybe I can convince Darren to write a story about gamers, but a player of games. But also in terms of being a creative, it was it 6 months before I was taking that basic game and sort of giving it a hack. And for those who don't know, a hack basically is when you take a system, or in this case a game, and you sort of cut it to pieces and you play around with it and try to improve it or change it to better fit your own needs. And so 6-7 months in, I was doing that. And at the time, I learned a really big lesson. Not that it's still my favorite, and that's part nostalgia and part I think it's a very good version. But I learned that you can't just hack a thing up and make a few changes and hope it works out all right. Because playing the version that I made was not as good. I was like, oh, okay, so I had to take it more seriously. Um, so yeah, so that started a lifelong love of design, and it really fueled my desire to be a writer as well, to be a creative, to tell stories.
That's awesome. It's amazing how many people that's done that for. And the chat is chiming in with their boxes. Holly
Yeah.
says she was the blue box, and Liam says he was the white box. So.
Yep. I've got that Holmes edition, that blue box too, which I really like for different reasons. But yeah.
What is this? I don't want to get too far off track here, but is there subtle differences or is there vast differences between the boxes?
So, and so some of this is going to be strictly my opinion, but as Gygax and TSR are creating Advanced Dungeons and Dragons AD&D, the first edition, the old original D&D sort of split off in what they started calling basic D&D, although I don't think they refer to it the Holmes edition. So Dr. J. Eric Holmes, I think, rewrote the old D&D into what they call the blue box. It's very, and so these are still the days, remember, and a lot of people don't understand this, and I don't want to take up all our time with it, but role-playing games used to be very much like underground comics, right? It was that kind of art, very black and white, subversive in a lot of ways, right? And so that's something that I think over time, like every media, it's lost a little bit of that. It's split into people who find it, more mainstream versions versus those who are still looking at the underground version. But through the politics of TSR, the next version was written by Tom Moldvay. Same basic rules, although there are a few differences. Most notably, in Blue Box, halflings are not, and elves and dwarves are not their own class: fighter, mage, thief, etc. Whereas in Moldvay's edition, they become their own class. So you're not an elven fighter; you're just an elf. That sort of thing. So,
I asked that for a little bit of a specific question that I wanted to kind of lean into about multiverse as well. In that, so I mean, it sounds like everything that they did was kind of to tweak something that they found was kind of off a little bit, or that fandom, proclaimed, you should do this the next time you put out something like that. So I'm kind of curious about, is that a similar approach you take with the play track? Are you looking at the feedback that people give you to manage how you're going to run the play track year after year?
Yes, absolutely. We want to find out, and we're still finding out, and I think we'll be a few more years doing that, what kind of gamers come to Multiverse. And you can really take two approaches. Actually, you can do both approaches. You can lure the kind of gamer you want, although basically the kind of gamer we want is someone who is open-minded to diverse ideas and experiences, and is not a total butthead. That's kind of the criteria. No buttheads allowed, except me. I'm the only butthead allowed. But you can either lure a kind of gamer that you want, and I didn't think that was a good idea to start. Yes, obviously I do a lot of RPG stuff, but I also do historical miniatures. I do 40K. I do board games. I love board games, and card games. I'm not as good at card games, but I still find them valuable and fun to play. So that was one thing we were trying to do. as well as introduce people who are not gamers, which is a lot of people who come to games. So it's sort of that, we want to get a certain kind of gamer, but we also want to find people to sort of bring their own stuff in terms of what they want to play, and then also introduce them to other things.
So the play track kind of runs over kind of the gaming hall, and then the aspects of setting up the track for panels and the like. One of which I did last year for Multiverse. So in managing both segments, do you have different philosophies for both ideas, or are you pretty much? I mean, I would imagine setting up the panels is probably a lot more rigid than opening up the gaming hall. Or is there a strategy that you apply to the gaming hall that you kind of adopted that so that, I mean, like you said, you're trying to figure it out, I guess. So
right. So in terms of the game hall, I think probably say I coordinate the two of them is more the way to put it. And we've had a couple of different people running the game hall over the few years, and all was great. I think did a fantastic job. And so this primarily set up to the gaming hall is primarily set up to be a welcoming place. Come in and game. Everybody is welcome here. There's a game here, and I believe that there's absolutely a game there for everybody. And so we're trying to lure people in with not just board games. Actually, last year we also had some Mario Kart going on.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that.
And so that's kind of the philosophy for the board game room. Get people in, get them being social, right? Because gaming is invariably, at least the way what we're going to do at Multiverse, is a social aspect. Decompress between different between the panels, right? And just sit and spend time with people. Whereas for the play, specifically the play track, what I tried to do from the beginning with two things. One, talk about game design, because it's near and dear to my heart, and I think that a lot of people are interested in it.
Yeah.
And we had people we have had and will continue to have people who are game designers among the guests and being part of the track. But also the second thing is to sort of talk about the culture of gaming, which is changing, and it's important for people. I'll just put it out there. Gaming has not always been as welcoming as it should be. It's a space where everyone is welcome, but not a chair isn't always put out for people who are different, right? And so that's something that I've tried to talk about as well. Talking about the fact that that gamers aren't just scruffy old white guys like me, that it's an absolute spectrum of people, and it always has been. Women and people of color and people of different sexualities have always been part of gaming. It's just that the face of gaming looks way too much like my face, and it's off-putting. And it's important that we change that. So I can't change my face too much, but I do try to create content that I hopefully people can see is we're celebrating those differences.
Does that go along with the choice of games that you play as well? Do you look at certain games and kind of rule them out of the mixture because they might be too not as inclusive? They might be too advanced or exclusive to a certain type of person that wants to play those?
Yeah, I mean, we board games are pretty inclusive, I think.
I would say for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, but some role-playing games can be exclusive either in their concept, right? Is a little bit. I want to be careful what I say here. It's not that people aren't smart enough to figure that out on themselves, but high concept role-playing games can be a little pretentious.
Yeah.
And
I have a lot involved in that too.
yeah, and there's a lot involved. And for con gaming space, they don't work as well unless the GM or GMs puts in a lot of work, right, to make it accessible to people. Um, Whereas, unfortunately, and this is where I'm always torn, um, and some of the people in the chat probably understand this. Most people seem, or it's been common for decades that when you talk about role playing games, you invariably invoke the phrase D&D.
Yeah.
And Dungeons and Dragons technically was the first sort of kind of, and for about all of not even I don't think it was 12 months, but barely a year before other role playing games were like, oh, okay, yeah, we could do this thing. And for better or worse, it has not only become the face of the gaming, but it's also become the now that gaming has reached more mainstream. It's the game that the mainstream folks go to. It's the game that people who don't game but want to watch. I mean, I love Critical Role. I love everything they've done. They seem to be great people, at least on the surface. I don't know them personally, but it's not an accurate representation of what happens around the table.
Mm-hmm.
And it has created a ton of money for a corporation that I know Liam Mayfaint. Yes, Liam Mayfaint. I know.
Yeah, he says gas.
A butt ton of money for a corporation that is long past caring about the content and the beauty of the game and the underground nature of the media. Right. Role playing games is a type of media. It's an artistic expression. It's a hill I'll die on any day of the week. And Dungeons and Dragons has become the McDonald's, has become the World of Warcraft, has become, and it was before WoW. It was WoW before WoW. It's the art that's in the dentist office, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but it is also an easy and to a certain degree also Pathfinder, which is D&D adjacent, but so that Liam doesn't have to faint, I will mention Pathfinder as well. They're easy on ramps to the highway of role playing games. For good or ill.
So let me play a little devil's advocate here about RPG, especially. The design of RPG is not a quick design, right? It is to you're going to spend some time creating and moving through the game. Mm-hmm. An average game is not an hour long. It's much more complicated than that and much longer than that. And with a weekend that you only have a weekend with a lot of things going on.
Right.
What is that the biggest challenge for you in this idea, or do you find that there is some loyal people who will come and just do that with you?
There are a small group of people so far who have come to do that sort of thing. Yes. So this is where the panel. This is where a conflict does go. It's not nobody's sword fighting over it, but well, I guess we could do it that way. But some panels are what are an hour, right?
Yeah.
And in an hour, it'd be very difficult to really impart the nuances or even much of the interest. You can do it. I know people who are great at it. I need at least 2 hours personally. So having panels, which are an hour, and having then doing like an hour-long demo for a board game or a miniatures game or a role-playing game does present a lot of challenges. So I think that this year, what we may do in terms of doing demos and things is have a panel with interest and then demos for a couple hours after that which build on the interest that the panel has created.
Is there methods to like continue the game beyond multiverse? Have you found that might be an idea, is to like get something started just to give everybody an introduction, and then if they want to continue, they can go to certain outlets and things like that to do that?
Right, but for the most part, it's been anecdotal,
Yeah.
and I think that again, that's something this year that I would like to have some prepared material for folks.
Nice.
This is where you like role playing games, or you like Euro board games, or you like whatever. Um, Here's where you can go to continue your interest, and hopefully next year come back and share that interest with us. I mean, one of the joys in life I've had is introducing someone to role playing games, and then they become a lifelong gamer.
Yeah.
Right? I've had a lot of relationships start and end at a gaming table, and it's a real thing. People don't think that gamers are getting any, but we are. So
Yeah. Is
Well,
there an
nice
Uno
discussion.
set amongst the games that come along with the gaming hall?
I'm sorry.
Is there an Uno set in there
I think
amongst
we
the
had an
games that
Uno
come with
set.
it?
I do believe we had an Uno set. I love playing Uno. So
Well, anybody out there who thinks that they can play Uno, I'm down. I'm down to give it a go because I'm pretty good.
you heard it, Multiverse. Joe has thrown down the glove of Uno, and we were going to pick that up.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna eat my words. We've probably got some ranked players out there and stuff out there in the multiverse. But yeah, see, Liam's already in it. Liam's ready to go.
There we go. Yep.
Uno battle, yes, Uno battle. Yeah, you're getting some good comments here. Liam said, "Warhammer,"
Right. Yeah.
War of the Worlds was based on Warhammer. Right?
Was from Warhammer, right? And Warhammer Fantasy and fantasy role playing as well. So
yeah, there's a conversation about a farting couch.
Oh boy.
Yeah, which is an item that should. Yeah, so they misread the message. But Vanessa actually put fainting couch. I gotta pull it up here.
Gotcha.
We misread it as farting couch, but we'll go past that. We'll go past that really fast. Was Chuck Tingle RPG demo in the play track last year, or in the gaming hall?
It was in the play track. Although, I mean, the gaming hall just really is sort of. I mean, the two. It's hard. The two are separated, but they really are interrelated with one another, right? And so that we may change the venue of, depending on how things go, we may change the venue of the Chuck Tingle, but Chuck Tingle is going to happen again this year too.
Nice. And yeah, so Vanessa says we should play the Uno drinking game. I never played the Uno drinking game, so I'm down. I'm always down. I'm always down when you put the words Uno and drinking together.
Yeah.
And Vanessa says she'll kick my ass. And Liam grew up in a very aggressive Uno family, where I'll talk serious trash while I lose. All couches are farting couches. Yes.
That's true. Yep. Yeah, and that was a great thing. Chuck Tingle retweeted us last year about our Chuck Tingle RPG. So, one day, hopefully, Dr. Tingle will grace Multiverse and can run the game himself.
There you go. That would be amazing, huh?
That would be amazing.
So, do tell us a little. I mean, you've kind of touched on, how you're rebranding the demos a little bit this year. But what is something else that you're adding to this year's curriculum that you didn't have last year?
So curriculum-wise, we're going to focus again on design again this year. I'm going to get as many designers talking about game design of all sorts as I can. But also always with the idea that we live in a new world now where we have to think outside our previous cultural and social boxes. That's always going to be sort of front and center. But yeah, so focus on design, focus on getting people from sitting at the panel to sitting at a table, making that connection for people. That is going to be very important this year.
Is the Mario Kart tournament coming back?
I believe it is, as long as we can get a.
Because I know that was very popular.
Yeah.
People were running up when their turn came up to come and do that. I know people coming by doing that. So.
Yeah, that worked really well, and I think people maybe we can get a couple other games in there as well.
Yeah.
We're also going to have quite possibly a couple arcade games.
Nice.
That should happen this year, so that'll be something else for people.
Yeah, Vanessa mentioned something about that earlier. Here, let me move up there and see what she said.
Yeah. So anything that gets people into the gaming room, I think gaming rooms need to be sticky. You get people in, and then you keep them there. It's like, you play Miss Pac-Man, play some Uno.
It has to have that nostalgic feel, doesn't it? It has to have that Pepsi on the floor feel,
Right. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Literally, figuratively sticky, but also literally sticky, right?
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I'm not sure if we'll get our deposit back if that happens, but I'll talk.
Yeah. We'll you need to put some mats down or something,
Right. There we go.
Hey, we'd like them in the other track rooms too, please.
No. Gaming gets the cabinets, and everybody else can suffer.
Do we know which cabinets that are being? Is it going to be like one of those where it has like the multi-arcade kind of idea?
I do not know for sure, but that information will be out eventually. So
we put adhesive pads on the gaming scenes once you're in.
Yeah, there we go.
Remember who's facilitating the cabinet?
Yes, Vanessa is.
You're messing with the boss now.
I know.
Sean. Not multi-game. Okay.
It's what I do.
So the last few minutes, I want to talk about you because you just released a brand new collection of short stories. Tell everybody a little bit about that, and your foray into publishing and writing again. This is exciting for you.
It is very exciting. So a couple of years ago, I had a pile of rejected short stories, and I sort of laughed. I said, I should put out a Dear Sean book, a collection of stories that were rejected. I tend to only send a story out once or twice before I move on to another. That's just how I work. And so I realized I'm going to be at Con Carolinas. I'm, very involved with the writing tribe on Facebook. Plugged, there it is. I plugged it. And I've been published, but I really wanted something more. I want people to read what I write. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I just decided one day, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I grabbed 5 rejected stories and one that had been read by someone, but not been sent out anywhere. And so it is, the collection is called The Language of Skeptics, which is the title of one of the stories. And it's a collection of 6 short stories that I've written. It's a collection of science fiction and horror and a little urban fantasy. Although the urban fantasy takes place on a desolate road in Maine, so it's sort of like rural fantasy. It's short stories. Is that a
nod to Stephen King?
Right, yes. And so, yes, it is much of a nod to Stephen King, actually. There's flash fiction and there are short stories. And it comes out on the 31st. And it's a big step for me. And I think it's a big step for a lot of writers to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm good enough that I'm being asked about my writing, and my writing has been accepted to be published. But you really, I believe that I really need to take this step, not just from a business perspective, but from a creative perspective.
Nice.
I'll be also probably releasing some RPG stuff. I don't have details on that yet, later this year. But the fiction, something I've been working on writing since I was 10, which is a long time ago. So.
Yeah. And with short stories and doing collections, and these are short stories you've already kind of written in the past as well. So, but do you feel like that was the kind of baby step that you needed to take to start with? And I know that you've been working on novels and writing longer fiction, but do you find a comfort zone with the short story, especially in the horror genre?
Yes, that is true. I'm very much more comfortable doing horror in short form. I think there's probably always an element of SF, maybe, to what I write. But yes, horror in short form works for me because it's very concise and discrete moment in time, and I find that it'll builds the tension better, at least for me as a writer. But no, I like writing short stories. That's kind of I started once my first mystery novel only got to like chapter 4 when I was 10. I started writing. A lot of people do fanfic. Well, I did gaming fanfic. Is what I did. Specifically,
talk about niches.
Yes, right, exactly. I did some game called Starfleet Battles. I just did some basic, military SF fanfic for that, and that's where I kind of got started. So yeah, I think that it is also. I will also say this: short stories are something that I've worked on as my craft, and I didn't realize it. I was doing it unconsciously, but I realized I had been working on short stories, and I've been honing that particular craft. And obviously, people will like or not like it, depending. But I think it's damn good. And I've had a story recently that's been rejected twice, although it made it pretty far the second time, and that's okay. I'm not upset. I like rejections. Well, I don't like rejections, but I take a very positive view of rejection. But this story is damn good, and it's going to probably be the centerpiece of the second Dear Sean letters, number 2, down the road, maybe this year, maybe early next year.
Nice, awesome. Well, you're getting high praise. Gaming fanfic nerd of the highest order. Through SFB, and then Sean's writing is good brain seasoning, can confirm.
I appreciate that.
Sean, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. Thank you so much. I wish we had more time, but sadly, I've got to move on. Well, not sadly. I'm excited to move on to Mr. Kennedy, but I'm always excited to talk to you, my friend. So we'll get together and talk a little bit more in depth about this short story collection. I have a feeling. So
that sounds good to me.
All right, sir, and we'll be right back. Speaking of collections, this is a great little ad for a collection you all should be checking out from our friends at Inked Publishing, a sponsor at Multiverse. And then we'll be back with Mr. Darren Kennedy.
Dear reader, welcome to this collection of stories where villains arise. And who doesn't like hidden surprises? We've all given that handle a twist and a turn. Each of these stories likewise has a twist. It could be quirky, it could be fun. It also may be very, very horrifying. But it's definitely not what you'd expect. These stories have villains who arise from conspiracy theories, some from urban legends, others from realms of spirits, and a few from the depths of your very soul. Wherever these villains may be hiding, I hope you enjoy discovering them. And as you turn each page in anticipation of the villain arising, that aha moment just might make you jump. Check out Hidden Villains Arise, now available on paperback and Kindle from the folks at Inked Publishing. And we're back, and I have Mr. Darren Kennedy with me. I'm super excited to have Mr. Darren Kennedy with me. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. Tell everybody, I did a little intro for you, but tell everybody a little bit about yourself so everybody can get a better sense of what you do and how you do it.
So I am currently based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. My day job is I am a family physician. So I am your hypertension, diabetes, hyperlipidemia, minor procedures, little psychiatry, little bit of women and children's care. So we kind of do everything. And then on weekends, I write these things. I didn't write all of those. Those are also by all of my favorite authors, but and do a lot of conventions like Multiverse. And that's where I do a lot of the selling of my books. Working more on the online side of the business, but I do move a lot of my books in person.
That's awesome. I was gonna say I did mention you're a prolific author, but maybe not that prolific.
No, that's likely. No, that's all my books. So.
Along those lines about vending, what is it about Multiverse that you find uniquely suited to the vendor aspect of it? What do you like about vending at Multiverse that maybe you don't get somewhere else?
At Multiverse, I do like having sort of the hallway that leads to a lot of the different areas. The authors are out to where we have sort of access to everybody as they're going by. And there's I forget, I think it's called the 7 touch thing, where if someone sees something once, they may just go on by. But after they've seen it about 7 times, they go, I keep seeing this. What is that? So, having us kind of all in the hallway, also all together to where we can sort of help each other. Then, because if someone comes over to me and says, I'm really looking for paranormal romance, I might show them, well, you should go look at JD Blackrose's books because you're going to really, really like that. And you try to help people get to what they want. If what they want is what you've got, great. If what they want is someone else's book, they're going to help you as soon as you help them. And it's the rising tide raises all ships sort of thing.
Nice. And then you also do a lot of panels, one of which has been discussed a lot on the show, which we'll get to in a moment. But the panels there, I've talked to several people who've done panels at Multiverse. And the idea that there's a lot of different things that happen at Multiverse on panels. The panels are a little bit more diverse. They're a little bit more not what you see at your typical panel. Would you kind of agree with that? Is that kind of the draw to doing panels at Multiverse?
They are a little different. One of the things is I always notice it at Multiverse, it seems the track leader is in the room with each of their different tracks. And so they are very much guiding the conversation in addition to everybody that's behind the table. So there's a little bit more maybe of a hands-on approach. And then a lot of times the topics there a lot of times at a lot of different conventions, you'll see a lot of similar things. I don't want to say you're seeing the same thing because everybody's always trying to, make things that we've talked about, make it new again. That's part of what you're doing at a convention. But I do notice that at Multiverse, it seems like let's do something really crazy that we've not done before. And one of the ones that I really enjoy doing is where they'll have 4 people on one end and 4 people on the other end. And they give one of us Godzilla and they give the other one Jason Voorhees. And then we have to decide who win in the fight. And that's hysterical. And I've never done that at a different convention. So I do enjoy Monster versus Monster. And then there's a lot of other fun panels that we do as well.
That's the one that we've talked about a lot here is Monster Match.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I swear I didn't even know that was the one you were talking about. But yeah.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
I had
Yeah.
both Lisa and Mark Abbott on one episode, and we talked to Mark a lot about it, and then I talked to Jim Nettles about it as well. The first episode. So that's really cool that you love that, because that is one of my favorites. I love the energy of it. That's the other thing about Multiverse that I think is very unique in the panels, is that it's more of like an interactive social gathering than it is more of a informative, like, like lecturing talk kind of panel aspect to it. Do you find that to be true in most of the panels you attend at Multiverse as well?
I would agree. It seems like very, very much a conversational feel to each of the panels that we do. Yes, I would agree.
So what was the most challenging monster that you had at Monster Mash so far?
Oh my gosh. There was one of them was, I think it was two different subterranean 80s movies. Like one of them was Chud and one of them was, I forget, because this is months.
Was it the Critters one? Was it Chud and Critters? Maybe
it was like Chud versus Critters, and I think I may have seen Critters and Chud 40 years ago. But so the challenge is not so much making that monster interesting or tough; it's me remembering anything about that monster. If you ask me who's my favorite one so far, was whenever they had us with Ghidorah and the other team had the dragon from Dragon Slayer, and I was like, the dragon in Dragon Slayer was killed by Ally McBeal's boyfriend. I think that King Ghidorah wins this fight.
It's also part, like, you also have to develop some good debating skills, right, and some good bantering skills a little bit here, and you could kind of, I don't want to say you could fake it till you make it kind of idea, but you can kind of elaborate and expand upon somebody if they make a misstep, right?
Correct. if they go too far down this path, you can lop them off. So you have to just kind of be watching. Dragon Slayer is a great movie, but Ghidorah would totally win that fight.
Has there been a panel that kind of surprised you, that you kind of maybe weren't excited about going into it, but then you quickly changed your mind about it, that you kind of go, I would like to do that again?
I think that was the one, because I went out when I went in for the very first time I was doing that one, and I was kind of like, we're gonna do what? We're just debating this. It's awesome. It's the whole audience gets into it. It's it's that one.
Do you like? I had this conversation with Mark about how at the end he uniquely turns the audience into a participant, and then it's the panelists versus the audience at the end. Do you like that aspect of it too?
That is kind of fun.
The audience opinions are the best part of Monster Mash. Audience members can crush it sometimes, and then we're out of druids to kill the dragon with.
But maybe we can get some droids.
We like to make the audience a part of the fun at Multiverse, for sure. Yes, yeah, for sure. You just finished a series recently. You're venturing into some more writing. I'm curious about, I love talking to people about finishing series. Was it kind of the idea was I'm done with it now, I can move forward with something else, or are you missing it? Did you have a hard time closing it out? How did you feel about that last bit, trying to get through it?
That's a very interesting question, because the series that I just finished is the one that you alluded to at the beginning, is my fantasy chess series. Mm-hmm. And that's the one that got me into writing in the first place. I've been sort of planning that series in my head since I was a teenager, and I started writing it, believe it or not, this is 20 years ago, 2003, when I was deployed to Iraq. And I worked for years on my first book, trying to figure out how to write. And then when I moved to Charlotte in 2008, I had that book and maybe half of the sequel sort of done. but then I got some ideas for some other books. And so I wrote another whole trilogy and a standalone and a bunch of short stories in the middle of all that. And it's one of those ones where it was the first trilogy I was working on, but I had to write the second trilogy and get it out of my head to free up my brain to write the first trilogy. And in the middle of the second trilogy, I had to stop everything and write that standalone book, because it when writers say the book that wants to be written right now is the one that I have to write, they're kind of not kidding. And some people can write more than one book at once, but I'm not one of those people. So I wrote that standalone book. Then I finished the second trilogy that I started. Then I finally went back and finished writing book 2 of the chess trilogy. And then I finally was brain freed up enough to do the final book, which was kind of the point of the whole series. You know, if you're writing a magical chess game, the thing that everybody's waiting for is the chess game.
Yeah.
And so, and when I say it's the last third of 100,000 word book is the final battle, I don't know if I'll ever write a epic final battle of that extent again. I might. We'll see.
You know, it's funny that this is mentioned, because the very first time, and I had met Darren on Zoom, and we've been hanging out at the Writers Tribe. But the very first time that I actually met him in person, he told me the story of the buildings. You remember that, Darren, telling me the story?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. And so coincidentally, Multiverse is right next to the 2 chess piece buildings in Atlanta known as the King and the Queen.
But long before there was ever a multiverse, way back in 2003, when I was planning my chess book, the final battle of book 1 takes place in the courtyard between the King and Queen buildings in Atlanta, which is now the backyard of Multiverse. Like, if you walk out the hotel, you're looking up at the King and Queen. That was where I said it. And the reason that I used those buildings is because I was in the Army at that time, stationed at Fort Benning. And when I would drive through Atlanta going home to visit family, sometimes I would take the loop around instead of 85 straight through. And there's these 2 gigantic chess pieces. I'm like, well, where else is the final battle of your first chess book going to take place? Because I knew a long time ago where the final battle of book 3 took place, and it was not Atlanta.
Vanessa says she remembers that story, and it makes her so happy. So what are you working on now? What is the next thing you're tackling?
So I am working on a longer project. I'm going to be careful with what I say because I'm still working on it.
Fair enough.
This is going to be a much longer thing. It was going to be 5 books, then 7, and now I think it's 9. But it might be 10, but I think it's 9. And I'll just say, it takes everything you like about Buffy, Highlander, and X-Men, throws it in a blender with every 80s song you've ever heard, and is served chilled and delightful.
Dude,
and I'll leave it at that.
Amazing. That sounds freaking amazing. I've always admired you're one of those people that really, when they sit down to do this, because I know you have as little time as I have to do anything. And because you go on the convention circuit, you're gone for probably 4 months. You may have like a week off here and there, but
I think I've got about 20 events in 2023, but several of those are like one day, like a Sunday afternoon convention. Okay. So I'm probably right about at saturation point for how much I can do and still, function in my life and make words, because some people can go to conventions and write, and like every once in a while when I go to Dragon, I'll wake up early and I'm like, well, I'm conscious, and I'll just go down and get a coffee and write until everybody else starts milling around. But most of the time at convention, you're getting up, having breakfast with everybody, and then you're either paneling or selling books behind a table. And if you've gone to a convention and you're focusing on anything other than those two things, then you're not doing what you're there to be doing. And everybody does cons differently, but my sort of thing is I'm here to meet new fans, to get word out about my book, but also to do the panels. And if you're sitting behind the table typing away, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. So, but everybody does cons differently. That's just Darren's 2 cents on the subject.
You know, do you have you developed a writing routine? Do you feel like, or do you feel like it's very, you know, hit or miss with how you do it? Because you spit out words like I remember there was one like week when I did every single working at the writing tribe, and you would spit out like 15,000 words in that 1 week, I believe. And it was very interesting. And I'm just kind of curious about how you approach the writing aspect of it.
15K in a week would be pretty high for me. A lot of people are super duper fast. If I can get out 2,000 words in a really, really good day, that's a really good day for me. One of the things that I did, and not everybody can do this, but I got to a point after being in the Army for 8 years and then being here in Charlotte for about 7 years that and then going home and writing as much as I could, but still working a 5-day week. Something had to give. And so I dropped back to my day job being a 4-day week. And since Thursday afternoon is sort of my catch-up time and has been since I got here in Charlotte, I sort of perceive my life now, and I have 3.5 days where I'm a doctor and 3.5 days where I'm an author and human being. And so on Thursday nights, I usually go to a local coffee shop with some fellow writers and I make some words. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning, I'm usually coffee and bagel, making words, stop for lunch, try to make words. And some weekends it happens and some weekends it doesn't. But I really do try Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to knock it out. Now, I'm currently at about 2.67 books done of this new thing, about 2/3 of the way through the 3rd book. And my pantser writing strategy is finally catching up to me. and I'm starting to go. So when Steve and Ralph went here back in book 2, and then 4 pages later, so when Dave and Ralph, and I'm like, yeah. Wait, I thought it was Steve and Ralph. And I'm like, okay. So I'm going back and doing some editing all the way through before I finish the last third of the 3rd book to make sure that I'm not rewriting the last third of the 3rd book completely because I messed it up. So
do you get to that middle point? For me, that's always been the sticking point as a pantser myself, is that middle ground. I kind of know the beginning, I kind of know the ending, and then the middle stuff in between, which is that's very typical for a pantser, is that second act, really trying to beef that up a little bit. Is that so I've always been a stream of conscious writer because I can run through that, but for me it's a little bit, if I am picking up and stopping and starting, then that's where I get tripped up a lot.
Lately, what's been happening, I used to always get stuck at about the 60% mark. Now, It seems that what always happens is I get briefly stuck at around the 20% mark, and I'm like, what's happening? And then a lot of stuff will happen, and then I'll get right around the 2/3 point, and I'll be like, I have written 2/3 of a lot of really interesting stuff, and I've probably got a battle scene for the end that's going to be about 3 or 4 chapters, but I need about 5 chapters of stuff to happen right now because I'm not ready for, it's not time for the final battle, and everybody's not where they need to be, and all the chess pieces, pardon the pun, aren't where I need them to be. Mm-hmm. But what are all of those things? What are all those people in my book doing while I'm moving them into position for the final thing? And that is literally where I'm at right now. I am maneuvering all the people that you've met in the first 67,000 words to where I need them to be for the last 20,000 words. But there's about 17,000 words in between there and here. What are they going to do? So I'm working on it.
Nice.
But what's funny is for me, a lot of times figuring that out is some of my favorite parts of the storytelling.
Yeah.
What I always tell people about the chess series is it was supposed to be gather all the pieces, have them fight. Well, book 1 is gather all the pieces, and book 3 is have them fight. Book 2 was never in my original idea of the chess series. And when I realized I was writing a trilogy, I literally just had to sit down and go, what do all these people do for 100,000 words before I let them get together and fight? And the book 2, a lot of people tell me is their favorite one because everything just kind of goes haywire and they have to go fix it. And it's fun. It's a great book. It's a lot of fun, but it was never in the idea of the story whatsoever. So I always think that's fun.
You adopted a 3-act structure within the series structure, it sounds like.
Yep. I would say that's likely very true.
Vanessa says I choke at like the 75% mark. I usually have the last 5% in my head in some nebulous way, but I sometimes get stuck when I'm starting to approach at that. Yeah.
When in doubt, blow something up.
I can relate to that for sure. I wanted to ask you one more question about how, for Multiverse, it's a little different because your table is basically right in the middle usually. And the 2 times I've been there, you've been in the same spot. So you're pretty much right in the middle of where the great thing about Multiverse is it's basically one hallway. The con takes place. I mean, you have to go upstairs maybe once in the entire thing, maybe. But down the hallway is usually where the geek tracks are, and you can maneuver pretty quickly. And they also give you that nice little buffer that Multiverse does that not all cons do. So managing your table by yourself and then doing that aspect, have you developed kind of a strategy for that? Have you developed a rhythm? Is there something you can share with us that maybe somebody would benefit from in doing both of those aspects of the con?
I would say when you're doing your panel, be present on your panel, and when you then get back to your table, and if anybody from the panel wants to come with you, that's fine, but otherwise get back to your table. And when you're at your table, be present at your table, and there's being present, and then there's being somebody from a carnival who's like trying to get everybody and their brother to come over. It's just somewhere in the middle is the right answer. Yeah. And it comes with practice, because after a while you can sort of figure out who is shopping and who is just walking. And then you reach out to the people who are shopping, the people who are just walking. Maybe you reach out to a few of them every once in a while just to kind of, especially if they walk by several times. But I guess it's just learning who is your target audience, and trying to look and see who is actually interested in looking at your books.
Question for you: do you find that being on panels to be a good way to meet new fans?
Absolutely. A lot of times people will come by. They may not come by right. Sometimes they'll come by right away. Other times they may come by later, and they'll just say, "I really liked what you had to say about this," or "You mentioned your book," or lots of different things like that. And anything when you are meeting people that you don't know, that is a commonality that sparks the conversation, because a lot of this stuff is not stuff I've made up. This is stuff that we all talk about at conventions. People are buying you. If someone likes you, like if you had the best book in the world on your table and you're a jerk, you're not going to sell a book. If your book is fine, but you're really, engaging and stuff, someone goes, I like that author, I want to give their book a shot. They may get it home and not like it, but they're at the very least going to try it because you were a decent human being to them. So
they paid you. That's and you got the money for it. So
there is that.
Well, Darren, thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, my friend. And
Yep. We'll be up here at Con Carolinas and
yes,
Charlotte.
sir. Yes, sir.
And then Multiverse in October.
Yes,
Can't
sir.
wait for both.
Me neither. And so it was great to talk to you. And thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it, my friend.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
And so we're going to finish up here. I do have a little bit of something to show you all. If another reason, if you didn't earlier get the sense of wanting to be a part of the gaming aspect of Multiverse, here's a little something on the gaming hall, and then I'll be back to wrap things up. And now, another reason why, among many, you should be attending Multiverse. Reason 1005, the Gaming Hall. Whether you want to grab a quick game between events or hang out all weekend long, the Multiverse Gaming Hall is the place to be. You get to choose from a selection of the best tabletop strategy and RPG games to check out from the Game Central. You can even purchase games or accessories to use and take home. What you see here on the screen are the type of games, and subject to change and availability, that will be available to play in the Multiverse Game Lounge. And remember, you're welcome to always bring your own. What are you waiting for? Join us today. Go to multiversecon.org and register to become a member of the Multiverse. You know, each and every week I give you another good reason to be with us in October. I don't see why you haven't already signed up. If you haven't, come, please. We want to see you. We want you to be a part of this incredible convention and do all these wonderful things that we were talking about and experience them for yourselves, and then come back and talk to me about it, because I would love to hear your stories and how you approach that. And you're very welcome. Thank you for being here, everybody. And it's really, Vanessa wanted to say thank you to Darren. Yes. And Sean says, awesome. And yes, Sean says, come to Multiverse. I will roll dice with you. Yes, please. That would be awesome. So, I mean, you get to roll dice with Sean. What else do you need? I think half of you watching this at some point, we're going to do that. But hey, now you have the reason, right? And it's and Vanessa's stealing my thunder again. She posted earlier. Now she's taking my taglines from me, but that's all right. I love it. Yes, it is always time to go indie now, and it is always time to go to Multiverse. We'll see you again next week, everybody. We've got another great show for you, so come and join us again, same time, same channel. Hit the like button, subscribe, and join us for another spotlight on Multiverse.